public imagination is fixated on the wrong war. Media narratives project kinetic threats, hypersonic missiles, carrier groups maneuvering near the Taiwan Strait. This is a deliberate misdirection. The primary vector of attack is not noise, it is silence. Core systemic liability is not military, it is financial. As confirmed by Janet Yellen, the national debt, now exceeding $38 trillion, represents a catastrophic vulnerability. This is the target. Not cities, but the digital ledger that underpins global liquidity. Adversaries understand this. They will not engage in a symmetric, kinetic contest they cannot win. The strategic objective is to sever the central nervous system of the American economy. This war begins on the ocean floor. The second vector is orbital, satellite blinding, a temporary, non-kinetic incapacitation of GPS and communication relays. The objective is not destruction, but induced paranoia. A launch on warning protocol is useless if the warning ceased to exist. This is the blueprint for creating a blind Leviathan, an entity with unparalleled kinetic force, but stripped of its senses. An information-deprived America, with forces deployed from South Korea to the Persian Gulf, does not become passive. It becomes hyper-reactive. With its financial system paralyzed and its intelligence grid dark, the Leviathan is forced into a disproportionate kinetic response against a manufactured proxy, such as an escalation in Venezuela. This is the endgame, not to defeat America, but to force it to trigger its own systemic solvency crisis. CSIS reports confirm this asymmetric strategy is the new warfare doctrine. Adversaries pivot to asymmetric warfare not because they are strong, but because they are weak. A conventional kinetic conflict with the United States is unwinnable and, more critically, unaffordable. It is a mathematical certainty. Their own domestic liabilities force them to find cheaper vectors of attack, weaponizing our systemic weaknesses against us. Examine the blueprint. According to CSIS analysis, the war in Ukraine functions as a domestic solvency crisis for Russia. The astronomical cost of a prolonged, unpopular kinetic war creates a critical liability, draining state resources and risking internal political collapse. They are burning through capital at an unsustainable rate, learning a hard lesson in real time. This weakness forces a strategic pivot. Having engineered their own solvency crisis, the protocol is now to export that model to their primary adversary. The goal is to inflict a disproportionate financial wound. Why spend $1 trillion on a war when a coordinated cyber campaign can trigger a cascade failure in the target's financial system? This is the blueprint now aimed at the United States. The primary target is the systemic financial liability identified by Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, the $38 trillion national debt testing a red line, source number 1. This debt is the vulnerability. Coordinated cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, like those against Romanian energy producers, source number 2, are not random. They are probes designed to map the financial and systemic consequences of a grid-down scenario. The objective is to use these low-cost vectors to create high-cost dilemmas, fueling instability that requires U.S. attention, such as the military activity noted in Venezuela, source number 3, or forcing simultaneous crisis preparations for flashpoints like the Taiwan Strait, source number 4, drains capital and readiness. Each event is an accelerant, designed to chip away at solvency until the choice is either systemic collapse or a single, catastrophic kinetic expenditure that achieves the same result. The central calculation of 21st century warfare is asymmetric leverage. The Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, quantifies this new battlefield calculus. A single main battle tank, a kinetic asset valued at approximately 5 million can now be operationally neutralized by a first-person view drone costing as little as $500. This is not a balanced exchange. It is a 10,000 to 1 ratio of economic attrition. This is what military strategists term the democratization of violence. The capacity to project lethal force is no longer the exclusive domain of nation-states with massive industrial bases. It has been decentralized. An adversary does not need to build a carrier strike group. They need only to exploit the cost differential between offense and defense. They force the target into a state of permanent, high-cost mobilization. The objective is not to win a conventional, kinetic war. The objective is economic exhaustion. Every low-cost cyber attack on infrastructure, such as those targeting Romanian energy producers, and every proxy flare-up that demands a U.S. response, is a calculated drain on American liquidity. The adversary's true target is not the tank. It is the U.S. Treasury's balance sheet. This strategy forces a choice. Allow these asymmetric attacks to succeed, or mount a disproportionately expensive kinetic response. Both options accelerate the timeline toward a systemic solvency crisis, leveraging America's own financial liabilities as the ultimate weapon against itself. It is a launch-on-warning protocol for economic collapse. The geographic location of the next conflict is a deliberate misdirection. The true battlefield is not a physical territory, but a strategic condition, the gray zone. These zones are not sovereign failures, they are asymmetric laboratories. Reports of mounting military activity in regions like Venezuela are not evidence of a local crisis, but of a staging ground, a controlled environment for adversaries to calibrate vectors with plausible deniability. These laboratories are used to prototype attacks. The recent coordinated cyber campaign against Romanian water and energy infrastructure was not a random act of digital vandalism. According to CSIS analysis, this was a blueprint. It was a low-cost field test of tactics, techniques, and procedures against Western-style critical infrastructure, a live-fire exercise for an attack on the primary target's power grid or water supply. The strategic objective is to force a systemic overextension. Forcing U.S. forces in South Korea to prepare for a Taiwan Strait contingency drains military and financial resources at an alarming rate. Adversaries can trigger this high-cost response with low-cost provocations, creating multiple, simultaneous flashpoints. This is not about winning territory. It is about enforcing a catastrophic kinetic cost on the United States for upholding its security guarantees. Every proxy maneuver is mathematically engineered to target America's core liability, its systemic debt. As Janet Yellen warns, the $38 trillion debt is testing a critical red line. The gray zone is the lever. Each staged crisis is an accelerant designed to force a choice between a solvency crisis at home or a withdrawal from the global stage. It is a zero-sum protocol to trigger financial collapse by weaponizing America's own financial obligations against it. The doctrine is designated launch on warning. It is a systemic protocol to prevent decapitation. If early warning systems detect an incoming strategic launch, a retaliatory strike is initiated before the enemy warhead's impact. The entire protocol depends on one variable: trusted data from radar and satellite networks. This is the primary asymmetric vector. Instead of launching a missile, the adversary launches a cyber attack that blinds the radar. The screen goes black. The data feed is severed. This is the fog of digital war. The commander no longer knows if the silence is a glitch or if the system was blinded seconds before a full-scale strike. This is not a theoretical exercise. Coordinated cyber attacks recently targeted Romanian water and energy infrastructure, demonstrating a blueprint for crippling national systems during a manufactured crisis. Analysts at RUSI confirm that military command and control networks are the logical, high-value escalation of this exact vector. The commander is now forced into a zero-sum calculation. If he launches, he may initiate a full kinetic exchange based on a phantom threat. If he waits for verification that will never arrive, he risks the total annihilation of his forces. With U.S. assets already positioned for potential crises from the Taiwan Strait to other flashpoints, the system is primed for overload. The goal of the cyber attack is not to win the war, but to force a catastrophic, self-inflicted error by leveraging the adversary's own defense protocol against them. Adversaries observe U.S. forces in South Korea, preparing for a potential Taiwan Strait crisis. They note the overextension. This is not the primary theater. It is a strategic diversion for the real vector. The blueprint for this vector has already been field-tested. The coordinated holiday cyber attacks on the Romanian Water Authority and energy producers were not random. According to RUSI, this was a low-cost experiment to measure response times and systemic fragility of NATO-adjacent critical infrastructure. The ultimate target is not military hardware. It is America's core systemic liability, the $38 trillion national debt. A figure Janet Yellen confirms is testing the red line of solvency. This liability is a leveraged asset for our adversaries, and its stability is predicated entirely on predictable logistics and data flow. Therefore, the next phase is not a kinetic strike. It is a calibration shot designed for impossible attribution. Within the next 12 months, expect a coordinated shutdown of a critical logistics and data nexus. Specifically, a 3-day outage at the port of Long Beach, blamed on a legacy software failure, will coincide with a data corruption event at the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, DTCC. The event will be timed for a holiday weekend to maximize disruption and delay in response. The objective is to measure the precise economic shockwave and the political paralysis that results from an attack that cannot be proven. It is a launch-on-warning test, not for missiles, but for a full-spectrum economic assault. The official inquiry will find no state actor,